I am informed that we have a quorum this evening. Thank you all very much for that. We will start our meeting as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have two articles before us this evening in the context of this special town meeting, and we shouldn't have any problem getting through them. Just before we start, one note, there was a fire on Sunday up in Main Street, the Hollins home. They lost their home and some family pets, but fortunately everybody got out safely. There is a GoFundMe page to assist them in their temporary dislocation and having lost everything that they own. You can find that, I think, on the Winchester Facebook page if you're interested. There's been an overwhelming response to that already, and I'm sure they are very appreciative of that, as all we are. And I'd especially like to thank the firefighters who responded to that effort so quickly and effectively. Our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we are fortunate that there was no loss of life there. We are here this evening some 20 years after we bought Winning Farm to finally make an effective disposition of it. We will entertain debate on the two articles together. The presentations will be made together by members of the Board of Selectmen. The developer, Mr. Bonvie, will also address us with the allowance of the meeting. And then we will have recommendations from the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, FinCom, and the Housing Partnership Board. We will then undertake debate on the matters in a consolidated fashion. We will take, after we finish the presentations, we will take a procedural vote before we begin our final voting and deliberations. And the cause of that is the Code of Bylaws, which has a provision under Section 3.8.23, which requires that any reports or supporting materials in connection with motions before the meeting be presented to us 7 days before the vote. Because of the exigencies of the way the development agreement came together, most of us received that by email on Friday, and there is a final revised form of it on the table this evening as well. I think the materials that were distributed by the board on May 27th, which included the Developers Council's letter, Mr. Vaughn from Reamer and Bronstein's letter of May 26th, gave us all fair notice of what we are debating and deliberating tonight. But the development agreement is material and important, and the Code of Bylaws provides that if that's not provided to us within 7 days of the meeting, we can proceed only upon a majority vote of the meeting to waive that requirement. I think it would make sense for us to take that vote, and it would be appropriate to do so this evening. So after the presentations are made, we'll take that procedural vote on a majority vote basis, and we'll then entertain debate on the two motions, both of which will require a 2/3 vote. And because those will require a 2/3 vote, I think it makes sense for us to appoint tellers as we start this evening. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Pryor, Mr. Drum, and Ms. Wilson, if you could agree to serve as tellers for the meeting, and if you could please rise and raise your right hand and swear that you will agree to provide a complete and honest count of the vote before this meeting and report the same to the town meeting. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. As we usually do, we'll entertain preliminary motions to permit the conduct of the meeting. Those motions are that Richard Howard, Town Manager, Stacy Ward, Town Controller, Wade Welch, Town Council, and Mark Toogood assistant town manager who are not town meeting members be permitted to sit at the front of the auditorium with the Board of Selectmen during all sessions of this town meeting, that all members of the Finance Committee and their secretary, whether town meeting members or not, be permitted to sit together at the front of the auditorium during all sessions of this town meeting, that the town clerk or her designee or the assistant town clerk be permitted to occupy a desk on the platform during all sessions of this town meeting, that the moderator be authorized to permit members of various town boards, commissions, committees, department heads, petitioners of special articles to sit at the front auditorium during consideration of the appropriate articles. And I've advised Mr. Ron Bonvie, who's the developer, and the members of his team that they can sit at the front of the auditorium as we undertake debate this evening. Unless it be otherwise ordered, all adjourned sessions of this special town meeting shall be held on successive Thursday and Monday evenings at 7:30 p.m. in the Winchester High School auditorium until the work of this town meeting is completed. That action on all motions involving appropriation shall be contingent upon compliance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, a law known as the 2.5 tax limitation, that cable television coverage shall be permitted during all sessions of this special town meeting. Motion having been made and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is passed. Thank you very much. So this brings us to Article 1. You should have in front of you this evening a clean copy of the development agreement and a copy of Section G, financial consideration, that has a change to it that's highlighted, and as well the materials that were distributed on May 27th containing the articles and the motions. They're in a yellow covered book. The motion under Article 1 has changed ever so slightly, and that's because the entity controlled by the developer, which is referred to as BEK Winchester LLC, in the original motion, the name of that entity turns out to be BEK Winchester Winning Farm LLC, and then Mr. Welch has made one small lawyerly-like change to delete the words "and regulatory" before the agreement dated May 13th, 2006. So for purposes of completeness, I'll read the motion to you now as it now exists. Under Article 1, it's moved and seconded that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a development agreement with BEK Winchester Winning Farm LLC, the developer or their designee, substantially in the form set forth in Exhibit A to this motion, and such other terms and conditions which in the Selectmen's opinion are in the town's best interest, and further, upon the closing as set forth in the purchase and sale agreement between Winning Farm LLC and BEK Winchester Winning Farm LLC et al., the developer, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to release Winning Farm LLC from all obligations set forth in its current operating agreement dated March 13th, 2006, as amended, and regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants dated March 27th, 2006, both with the town. The motion having been made and seconded, now in support of the motion, the Board of Selectmen, the first speaker this evening will be Mr. Grenzbach, the chair of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Grenzbach.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. A very brief introduction. I want to thank you all for allowing us to defer the special town meeting until this evening to give us considerable time to sort of negotiate this deal. We had informal discussions sort of last fall, and they began in earnest in January. I've been working several months now. Very intensive discussions over the last month, the last week, and the last day. So we appreciate your taking the time to do this. The board will this evening recommend your favorable action, recommend it unanimously on both Article 1 and on subsequent Article 2. We think this is a reasonably good solution for the town and recommend it to you. Because the issue of the Winning Farm deals so directly with the neighborhood on Thornbury and also the folks from Precinct 6, we volunteered Mike Betancourt and Steve Powers to present the board's position tonight, so I'm going to ask you to listen to their presentation and comments. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Grenzbach. Mr. Betancourt.
Thank you, Lance, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, town meeting members, for participating in this special town meeting to discuss the proposal for the disposition of land at Winning Farm. Before you today is Article 1, which requests town meeting approval to authorize the Board of Selectmen to amend the Winning Farm operating and regulatory agreements and replace them with the new development agreement that you received. This will permit and guide construction of 29 age-restricted townhouse units and allow the transfer of the land from the Winning Farm LLC as represented by Richard Salter, to BEK Winchester Winning Farm LLC, as represented by Ronald Bonvie. Before we get into the details of the proposed transaction, I wanted to provide at least some of the background on this property, which has taken a bit of a roller coaster ride over the past 20 years. In 1996, the town purchased 45 acres of land from Winning Home Incorporated for $1.2 million. Of the 45 acres, 12.5 acres were designated for housing opportunities and development. While 32.5 acres were to be preserved, protected, and maintained for conservation and recreational use. The town established the use committee comprised of residents and neighbors to determine the highest and best use of the land for the town. The use committee made a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that the land would best serve the town by developing either single-family housing or an elderly housing facility. In 1998, based on the use committee's recommendation, the town issued the request for proposal for the development of the property with these criteria. This map represents the parcel which was the subject of the RFP. As you can see, Woburn borders the property to the northwest and Lexington to the southwest. And just to orient yourself a bit, for those of you not familiar with the area, Thornbury Road is located at the southeast portion of the parcel, where you can see the access road built by Richard Salter. In 2000, town meeting approved the sale of the 12.5-acre parcel to the Salter Group's Winning Farm LLC for $1.5 million to build an elderly housing facility, which included both independent senior living and assisted living units. To accommodate development of Salter's project, town meeting approved a zoning change to create an independent elderly housing overlay district, which sits on top of the existing land zone for conservation and recreational use, or SCI. The remaining 32.5 acres would remain conservation land owned by the town. Salter proposed 145 units on the property, but appeals and litigation from the neighborhood caused the plan to be modified by agreement to 88 assisted living units. While the ZBA approved the 88-unit project, the demand for assisted living facilities diminished, favoring age-in-place facilities where residents can transition to assisted living arrangements without moving from their apartments. Due to a confluence of events, including the recession and market forces moving away from these elderly housing developments, the developer was unable to finance the project and begin construction. The project has been stagnant for over a decade. The town has not been able to realize the intended benefits of the initial transaction, including housing for seniors and tax revenues. At present date, the town of Winchester does not have an ownership interest in the land that is the subject of this development proposal. Through the underlying Salter operating agreement, the town has a contract interest in the project only. Richard Salter has indicated that he does not have the capability to finance or continue the project as approved by the ZBA. Richard Salter is proposing to sell the property to Ron Bonvie for development of 29 units of age-restricted housing. The Board of Selectmen recommend that town meeting approve the sale and execute a new development agreement, which has been provided to town meeting members. In order for Bonvie to develop the 12.5 acres of land, town meeting will need to approve a rezoning as outlined in Article 2, which would add an attached residential cluster development overlay district, or ARCDOD. This will exist as an overlay district and not extinguish the underlying zoning of conservation and elderly housing. Ms. Kreger, on behalf of the Planning Board, will explain this process in more detail as we consider Article 2. Bonvie's development will consist of 29 townhouse units in a cluster, which will be age-restricted to 55 plus and not permit school-age children. 2 of the 29 units will be affordable pursuant to state guidelines and be counted towards our housing stock for affordable housing. The town will manage the lottery to determine qualified buyers who will purchase the property at a substantially reduced price. Pursuant to state law, the 2 affordable units will not be age restricted and will be taxed at the purchase price and not the value of the property. For those of you not familiar with the 55 restricted housing exemption, in 1995, President Clinton signed the Housing for Older Persons Act, which modified the Fair Housing Act to allow for housing to be marketed and restricted to persons age 55 or older, as long as 80% of the units were restricted to at least one household member being 55 or older, and no child under the age of 18 could reside there. For this project, Mr. Bonvie has committed to the town that 100% of the units will be age restricted. Again, to orient yourself, Thornbury Road is cited at the bottom of the image. This is a preliminary layout of the planned development, and you can see tan lines represent the walking trails around conservation land, where Bonvie will also construct a conservation pavilion to the southwest. Trails around the development will be maintained for public use, and parking will be available to the public on or adjacent to the property. So what else does the town get? Upon full execution of the purchase and sale agreement between Salter and Bonvie, Bonvie will make an unrestricted linkage payment of $1 million to the town of Winchester. Town meeting members will vote on allocation of the payment in a subsequent town meeting, as we cannot appropriate funds until we have received them. Bonvie will upgrade the Thornbury Road sewage pumping station, a necessary project that has been neglected for years. He will make improvements to the downstream sewage lines on Johnson Road and Wildwood Street. The roadways and utilities within the development will be completed and include hookup fees to the town utilities. The housing units will be marketed early to Winchester residents, giving them an exclusive window of opportunity to purchase the units before they are marketed outside of the community. The breakdown of the payments to the town represent total estimated payments of $5.3 million. This chart provides a general breakdown of the benefits received by the town. The initial purchase of the land from Salter was $1.5 million, including a $150,000 payment for infrastructure improvements, a $1 million unrestricted linkage payment upon the execution of the purchase and sale between Bonvie and Salter, $1.8 million as an estimated value of the 2 affordable units that will be built on site, up to $500,000 for the infrastructure improvements to the Thornbury Road pumping station and Johnson and Wildwood sewer line upgrades. Based on the developer's estimates, the project will begin providing tax revenue to the town in the second year of the development project around 2019 in the amount of $380,000 and grow to provide revenue of around $750,000 over 30 years based on a 2.5% year-over-year growth rate. This will provide much needed tax revenue for the town while limiting the impact on the school budget, which has been growing at a rate nearly 5% per year. At the outset of the town's discussions with Bonvie and Salter, the town commissioned an appraisal from Bonds & Company to value the property so that we could have an informed negotiation position. The bonds estimate valued the land at around $3.3 million on a comparison sales methodology. The Board of Selectmen felt the initial estimate was low, and due to the unique nature of the land, we couldn't rely on a comparison methodology alone to make an informed decision. The Board of Selectmen then commissioned LandVest Incorporated to perform a more comprehensive appraisal using cost and revenue projections comparing sales with similar developments. The LandVest estimate indicated the value would be between $4.8 and $6.4 million, which was consistent with the payments to the town, including the infrastructure improvements. In our consideration of the proposed projects, the Board of Selectmen evaluated the beneficial impacts of the development project and weighed them against the appraised value estimates. One of the primary benefits of the 55 restricted project was that there would be little or no school-age children that further impact the high enrollment in our schools and increasing education costs. Mr. Bonvie is recognized as a leader in the development of these projects, and his vast experience added further security that his planned development would be implemented successfully. The project will address demand for empty nester housing in Winchester and allow residents to downsize and remain in the community. Based on the recommendation of the Housing Partnership Board, the Board of Selectmen negotiated to address the affordable housing needs by requiring 2 on-site units instead of a cash payment in lieu of units. With the high property values in Winchester, it is no longer tenable for the town to turn payments into affordable housing opportunities. The developer has been working closely with residents from the neighborhood to explain the project details and address any needs or concerns that have arisen. We feel this townhouse project and building layout represents the appropriate size and scale for the neighborhood. Essential to this project is the improved public access to the 32.5 acres of conservation land around the approved development area and secures ongoing maintenance of the trails at no cost to the town. Traffic will minimally impact the neighborhood, as traffic from the project is likely to occur during the day and not at typical commuting times. The construction will be moderate and limited by conditions placed by the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Homeowners Association will be responsible for maintaining the internal roads, utilities, and grounds, and will not burden our DPW and town services. The town will realize new tax revenue at a time of increased demand from growing school enrollment and cost increases. Lastly, the project will finally resolve 20 years of debate over the disposition of the land and the size and scale of the project, while providing an opportunity for residents to connect with the conservation land, which has been long neglected. Upon town meeting approval of the development agreement as proposed in Article 1 and ARCDOT zoning proposed in Article 2, the proposal will continue with several public hearings. The Planning Board will hold public hearings and issue the ARCDOT area comprehensive plan and conditions to provide a framework for the development project and place conditions on the developer. The Conservation Commission will hold public hearings and issue an order of conditions that will require the developer to follow state and local wetland restrictions and conservation guidelines for the preservation of land surrounding the development. The Zoning Board of Appeals will meet to place conditions and requirements on the development project to be consistent with the recommendation of residents and town boards in order to issue the required special permit. The Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action as we believe this project is right for the town and the neighborhood. The project provides an opportunity to resolve many years of acrimony between neighbors and the developers and allows for the town to receive a generous unrestricted linkage payment, infrastructure improvements, on-site affordable housing, and much-needed tax revenue with limited impact on town services. I'm a resident of Precinct 6, and I've been engaged with the neighborhood over the past several months to work towards a common goal that works for the town and neighbors. I believe this is an excellent opportunity to move the agenda of the town forward and provide a good outcome for all parties involved. Finally, I want to thank my colleagues for reaching unanimous agreement on recommending this project. Many hours were spent deliberating on issues related to the project and evaluating the needs of the town and the neighborhood. Recommendations from the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, and the Housing Partnership Board were essential to achieving a final product that will provide value to the town for years to come. I am thankful that as we see the vitriol that exists in politics at the national level, a group of committed volunteers and staff can work together to provide a unified agreement for the benefit of the town here at the local level. Thank you, and we will now hear from Mr. Powers, who will speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. The original time for the proponent's presentation having expired, it's moved and seconded that the proponent's time be extended for 10 minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. I guess I'm the history here. I was here when it started, and I can give you a little history at the beginning, which I think is important. In 1998, they came to us from Winning Home Incorporated. That was attorney John McElhenney from Woburn and Joe Tarby, who was the attorney for Winning Home Incorporated. We had 6 weeks to raise $1.2 million, or I think the project that was coming in over there would have been a 40B project. That's what they were trying to do. We didn't have any intention of doing anything except put it out and try and get our money back. We had help from the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board. We had to get Finance Committee pockets of money to do it. We did do it, and then the history comes as Mike gave you. I'd like to commend Mr. Bonvie. Our negotiations have been going on since January. It started out at $1 million. I think the total project now is probably $3 million. He's been very cooperative, and I want to remind town meeting that in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of the board, this is a linkage agreement. This is not a sale of land. We don't own the land. There's a development agreement to get the zoning done so that Mr. Bonvie can move on, which I think is a needed project in the town of Winchester. 29 units, 2 of which will be affordable, 55 and over, no restriction on the schools. There's going to really be nothing. I think the oldest age is 19 that can be in there, and the owner has to be 55 and over. So I'd like to ask town meeting to support this. I've been a town meeting member for 27 years, and I really think this is the best we're going to do with the property. We have a fine gentleman that will build the project, and I think that it's very positive for the town, and we solicit your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Powers. The board has asked, and the chair has agreed, that the meeting hear from the developer. With us this evening, Mr. Ronald Bonvie. Mr. Bonvie.
Thank you very much. I want to first start by saying there have been a lot of time spent by all the boards and committees in this town. I can tell you I work all over this state, and I actually work in other states. And as far as the people that I've interacted with, this board, other boards, town manager, assistant town manager, town attorney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have top-notch people working for you. And I can tell you again, there are communities I go into that a lot of people don't have a clue and they don't treat us fair. My team has all kinds of issues and problems. Not this town. You can stand tall, very well represented by the people in front of you today, and other people that aren't in front of you, by the way. So having said that, I thank you, everyone, for all your help. I was asked to keep this at 5 minutes. I think Mr. Betancourt and Mr. Powers, specifically Mr. Betancourt, did a better job than I actually could do. He presented my proposal very well. So I'm going to go through some of these slides, and I'm probably going to say no reason to say a heck of a lot other than this one. This is my 44th year in the development business. I started when I was a junior in high school. I actually made more than the principal of the high school that year, which wasn't really a great thing. But anyway, that's the way it worked out. So 44 years in the building business, 28 years in the active adult business. I serve on several national boards and committees. I'm in Washington in 2 weeks for 3 days. I meet with a lot of state, federal senators, congressmen, et cetera, to talk about our issues and problems and concerns within our industry, which we have several, but that's beside the point. I'm an alternate board of director for Build Association of Greater Boston at the national level. I'm also on the educational committee. I'm one of 11 that chooses who's going to be educating our future developers in this industry, and that takes a lot of time, believe it or not. I've just been invited to be on the Urban Land Institute member 55-plus residential council. That's ULI, very big industry organization that we just formed this committee about a month ago. My partners on this transaction are Albert Ellis and Rick Cates, Dartmouth Advantage Partners. They've been involved in the construction industry since 1990. They're newbies, but I'm helping them along and they'll make it. All kidding aside, they're good partners. They've developed other communities throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and that's the extent of the partnership. Now, here's the people that will be involved directly on this site in this community. BSB Design, that would be Gary Snyder. He was the instrumental designer of the ledges within your community. He was the architect, and he is my architect. He is now with Bloodgood Sharp and Buster, and they are out of Des Moines, Iowa. Secondly, Beals Associates, I think you know them. They will be doing our site planning and civil engineering. Mark Bond, legal counsel. Mark is sitting over there. A great member of the team, very well, as I understand, respected within your community. He's given us a lot of great guidance. David Hawk, landscape architects. I believe firmly in landscape architecture. Why? First curb appeal and first look is huge. And I'm a firm believer in doing a great job when it comes to landscaping. Design East Interiors, interior merchandising, they will be doing our model on site. And I will go for a national award. In 2013, I was issued the best model in the United States in Las Vegas. There was 110,000 people there, and I will be going for the best model in the country in Winchester. That will be my goal if you allow me to do so. Carlson Communications, Rich Carlson is sitting over there. He's head of marketing and public relations for me. He's been with me for how many years, Rich? 16 years. I actually have subcontractors that retired last year that have worked for me for 40 years. I have a foreman that's worked for me for 43 years. Still works for me today. John Rodden Company Sales Center, Promatura Group, marketing research. Margaret Wild does all my demographic studies. We need to understand specifically the product that this demographic is going to want, specific sizes, finishes, et cetera. She will tell us why and how. She will do market studies, whether it be phone calling, et cetera. She's very good at what she does, but when I go to market, I want to take as much risk out of the market as I can, and I want to hit the market correctly with the right product, right size, right shape, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't like to lose. Meredith Communications, Internet Marketing, we all know what the Internet's done for us today. Meredith Oliver that's her position, and she helps me with that. All these people will be involved with this site. You'll probably meet, if you choose to, all of these people. Secondly, this is a site that I'm finishing up now. This is Southport in Mashpee, Mass. 750 homes, 32,000 square foot clubhouse, 9-hole golf course, walking the property really in earnest in the 90s. I have built 700 homes there right now. We are down to 50 left, and when I'm done with that 50, the town of Mashpee fathers, the selectmen, would love for me to find another parcel. There is just not another parcel available for me. It creates major, major, major dollars in revenues for the community, well over $1 million a year. As you can see, this is a golf course. There's a 9-hole course mingling through here. We have frontage on John's Pond up here. This is a 32,000 square foot clubhouse here. I'm actually, if you go on my webpage, you'll see the peninsula. That's right there. I've saved the best for last. I started over here, a property that was $395,000 4 years ago. We'll hit the mid-sixes here. And that's through marketing and just doing what we believe is the right thing. So that's Southport. It's a nationally known community. We've got, I think, we've been awarded 16 local and national awards. We're very proud of it. I'm a 4th-generation developer, builder. Actually, my son is. I'm 3rd. And hopefully we'll have maybe a 5th and a 6th. So this is a site plan that actually Mr. Betancourt presented to you. This is 26 homes. The selectmen asked me to add 2 affordable units to this process, and I was able to at least talk them into allowing me to add 1 more to offset some of the costs of those 2 affordables. As an affordable unit is going to sell approximately for about $180,000 to $200,000 to $210,000. As you can imagine, I cannot build a home for that price. It's a very, very big loser. So the selectmen did allow me to have up to 1 more additional unit. So 26, 2 affordables, 28, 1 more non-affordable. There's your 29 units. This plan depicts 26 homes. These 26 homes are in a duplex, 1 and 2. Number 3 is a triplex. Duplex meaning 2 units within the building. Number 3 is a 3-unit building. If you look over here at sizes, the largest unit would be 2553. Now, this is just a preliminary design. This plan will change several times. Square footages will change several times. Design will change several times. We will go through a process that, just like we've gone here negotiating, myself, my architects, my interior decorators, etc., will be sitting in a think room trying to figure out and redesign and design, and there's a lot of miscontent, disagreement between architects and interior designers that think a column should be there and the architect thinks it should be there, and all kinds of craziness goes on. But anyway, we get to a product that makes sense. It probably isn't going to look exactly like this, but it's going to be in line to this. If you look, this line here is the 100-foot setback from wetlands. We want to make sure we're going to do everything we can to stay on this side of that line and not this side of that line, okay? Because that 100-foot setback is also dear to our heart. I'm not guaranteed that we won't go to conservation and ask for some type of relief, but at this point in time, we don't expect to. So there's our 26 homes and soon to be an additional plan showing 3 more on this site. I'm going to show you in another plan the actual walking trails. This is an elevation that was done by our architect, which is kind of the feeling that we're looking for. This is not the home that will be built there, I can guarantee you. But if you notice, we've got some side entry garage here. We're trying to get away from the garage door appeal. As you can see, we haven't got there yet. When you drive down the road in a development like this where you've got housing on both sides that are in multi-unit buildings, what you want to strive for is to reduce the impact of the garage doors. If you drive through a lot of developments that are, I won't say poorly planned. I'm just going to say that maybe haven't put the thought into it that maybe they should have. And I'm guilty of it also, because it's so much easier to design that way. But you want to try to reduce that impact as much as you can. So these garage doors here and here and here, well, here and here, you try to bring them down so when you're driving down the street, you don't say, what a beautiful garage door this house has. It's not about garage doors. It's about living, okay? So this is a site plan, this is an elevation of the kind of feeling they would like to have, excluding the garage door up here. This is the actual perimeter of the site that we're looking to be included in the ARC-Dog zoning. If you notice, this is a cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac that exists today, there's a trailer or something at the end right here. Okay, so there it is. There's the trailer. And this is the property that we're talking about, including in the rezoning into the ARC-Dog. Okay, here's the additional trailer. This is dear to our heart. The number 1 or 2 or 3 amenity for our age group are walking trails, exercise. So if you notice, the plan that I showed you back here, I just messed it. Right? So this plan here, see these walking trails? I'm going to show you how they interconnect now with the abutting property. This is very important. So the walking trail connects right there. The walking trail connects here. What we're trying to do is make a maze of walking trails so that we can create a situation where somebody who lives here can walk through here, go all the way over there, come back here, and go all the way to there. The goal is continuity on walking trails is very important. So that's why we gave this to our site engineers and we made certain that the connections were basically lined up with the existing walking trails on abutting properties. So that's my proposal. My presentation, I think it would have been substantially larger, but my predecessors did such a great job. I'd like to hire them to give other presentations to other communities. I'm asking you please for this, to approve these 2 articles. I can guarantee you that I will do a good job for this community. I promise that I will reach out for, I do not guarantee you I will obtain national awards for this property. But I will, again, being tried, I will guarantee you that I will do a good job for you, and you will be proud of this product as I will be proud of this product. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bombi. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? Its chairperson, Mr. Goldenbuff.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, I'd like to thank the members of our subcommittee and the Finance Committee who met with the developers, studied the numbers, and then presented to our full committee. The full Finance Committee voted unanimously to recommend favorable action on both of these articles. Basically, Mr. Betancourt covered most of it, but I'd like to say a few things. In addition to the $1 million linkage payment that we'll receive unrestricted, there's the $500,000 in infrastructure that is needed for the town. The sewage pumping station in that area needs to be replaced. In addition, this will add around $400,000 a year in revenue, which, because it is new development, gives us an exclusion from 2.5, which means that it's added revenue that is sorely needed in our operating budget. So we, as I mentioned, unanimously recommend favorable action on both articles.
Thank you very much. May we have a recommendation from the Planning Board? Planning Board's chairperson, Ms. Greger.
Okay. Get my marching orders here. Thank you very much. Well, we are going to be talking about the ARCDOD. Yet again, you may remember this before from when we were talking about, oh gosh, Right Block Farm, long ago. But in any case, here we are, Winning Farm, Part 2. You can see where the parcel is out there on the west side, adjacent to Woburn and Lexington. It's 12.5 acres. Underlying zoning is SCI, Schools Conservation Institutional. And there's an additional independent elderly housing overlay district as well that was put on, as previously discussed. This is the parcel. As you can see, the part in green is the IEH, the Independent Elderly Housing, and what is proposed here for the ARCDOD is in blue. The ARCDOD is, in fact, is current, yes, in the blue as proposed, the ARCDOD. It's a mouthful. Attached Residential Cluster Development Overlay District, ARCDOD. That's why we usually use the acronym. It's a lot easier. What is it good for? Well, we like it because since it is a cluster development, it avoids sprawl and promotes preservation of open space. It protects the national environment as a result. It promotes good stormwater management practices as well. And it provides for affordable housing. All those things are goals that we've been striving, sometimes more in the breach than in the actuality, to be able to get here in town. And so we're very pleased to be able to provide for this zoning. Where has it been used so far in town? Only one location, right off of Cambridge Street. It's the Greystone development. Formerly, we used to always call it the Pansy Patch. So, what are we doing tonight? Very briefly, this will set up a framework so that the cluster housing can be applied for. It does not approve any project tonight. However, it does allow for the permitting process to begin. Once the planning board and the ZBA are in receipt of complete plans, we will be able to go through the area comprehensive plan on the part of the planning board. We will also be getting our reports from the Conservation Commission, as noted, and getting an order of conditions from them. And then also the Zoning Board of Appeals will actually provide for the special permit upon getting the recommendations from all of the above. So that will take a little while to happen. So we will try and get through it as soon as possible. One of the problems that we have found in the past is that often we are not provided with complete plans at the outset. And secondly, we have often been presented with plans from developers that frankly do themselves a disservice by not being able to give us information in a timely manner. However, we anticipate that that will not be happening here, so that we should be able to move ahead as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Betsy, if you could just, Ms. Kreger has appropriately addressed Article 2, which is brought by the planning board and deals with the zoning issues that she's articulated for us. If you also could just report to the meeting the planning board's recommendation as to Article 1.
I certainly can't. Well, in Article 1, yes, we've had unanimous votes for the planning board on both, so.
Thank you very much. If we could have a recommendation from the Conservation Commission, and its chairperson, Stephen Parkhurst. Mr. Parkhurst.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, like Mr. Powers, I was one of those that go back the 20 years to when I served on the Winning Farm Use Committee off the planning board at that
You
time.
look a lot younger.
And, well, that sort of thing keeps you young, Mr. Moderator. It really does. Or else it's going to kill you, one or the other. So it'll be nice to see this project come to conclusion, closure, if in fact it really does at this time. And could I poach on the developer's slide here that shows I think the one, what's the name of it? The cluster. No, the use plan, I think was it. you. We'll get to that. Well, the commission recommends favorable action on both articles. In fact, we voted unanimously to support them. Although I will tell you that what we see so far is not quite as strong in terms of what we would hope to get for conservation provisions here. But there are some issues that we need to negotiate, and we don't see enough to oppose the project by any means. I think quite the opposite. We're pleased to see it come along. The two areas that we were interested in is the preservation of access to the trails. That was number one. I mean, it's fine to have trails in 45 acres of land, but it isn't going to do you much good if the public can't get to them. And so there was some concern that there would be a limitation on the private property that would preclude the ability of the public to go on the public trails. That appears not to be the case. And I'll quote a couple of things here. If I can find them. I have them. In the agreement itself that you have before you, I mean, H2, public access to conservation lands. I think that addresses the first concern that we had. It says, show trails as may be required by the commission, orders of condition of use for such trails, and then easements shall be granted. Then there was a letter from Mark Vaughn that I think to the selectmen that may have been in your package also, that does give you, or give us assurance that the access will be there. Now, I asked for the slide to be put up because the other concern we had in the original orders of condition that we have, which have not expired, by the way, there was provision for a pavilion or shelter for people to rest if they were walking around the trails or if there were a rainstorm or whatever. And that shows, if you look to that little square on the very left-hand side of the sketch there, that is the pavilion. Now, how those trails will work out is something we have to negotiate with the developer, which we will do. They will file new orders of condition. The ones that we had with Salter that had some assurances with the 3-year expiration will become moot. If there's a new owner, a new developer, they will file a new order of condition, and we will negotiate the provisions at that time. So what it comes down to, make a long story short, we have sufficient assurances that the conservation provisions that we would like to have for the public of Winchester, we will be able to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parkhurst. We now have a recommendation from the Winchester Housing Partnership Board. Mr. Serbier.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I'm John Serbier, chair of the Housing Partnership Board. This is a group that was established by town meeting to advise the town on issues related to providing housing in Winchester that is affordable to the full range of residents, of income of town residents. Together with other representatives for the town and the neighborhood, I served at the outset of this process as a member of the Winning Farm Use Committee, so I meet that qualification as well. The Housing Partnership Board, at a meeting held last week, voted to support passage of Articles 1 and 2. This was a vote, though, that many of us took with some reluctance and mixed feelings. We very much appreciate the Selectmen's support for on-site affordable housing and Mr. Von V's acceptance in providing 2 affordable units. This, at the same time, this is a significant change from the original housing objectives for this land. A combination of conservation and housing funds were used by the town to purchase the land. In addition to retaining the majority of the land for conservation purposes, the intent was that 20% of the housing to be built on these 12.5 acres would be affordable over a range of incomes. Under the original plan, this would have been 18 housing units. With only 1.9% of the town's housing satisfying affordability criteria. We are well below the standard of 10%. We are also at one of the lowest levels in the entire state. It is important that we take every opportunity to improve, and the original plan would have been a significant contribution. The recent town practice has been that 10% of the units in any new housing development be affordable. The 2 affordable units that have been agreed to correspond to 7% of the 29-unit total, less than the 10% target. The Housing Partnership Board, as a result, will recommend that a portion of the $1 million linkage payment be used to make up this difference and provide additional affordable housing off-site, including possibility of supporting the Housing Authority's desire to provide a 10 micro-unit group home. There also have been important changes over time in the income levels to be served by housing built on this winning farmland, and I just want to point this out. The initial target covered a range of incomes, including median income households. This subsequently was changed to include only lower income corresponding to households earning no more than 50% of the Boston area median. In the current agreement, this is raised to 80% of the Boston area median, or approximately a $65,000 annual income for a 3-person household. We feel this is a much more reasonable level than the previous 50%. Members of the Housing Partnership Board also have concerns over the clause that's included in the draft operating agreement specifying that Mr. Bonvie or his successors will not utilize Chapter 40B housing provisions. To the best of our knowledge, this was not in the previous agreement. We feel this provision is unnecessary. It may be unenforceable. There are several people who have commented that it may be illegal. And it conveys the impression that Winchester does not welcome multifamily housing over a range of incomes. Our recommendation is that consideration be given to removing or at least modifying this clause from the final operating agreement. Like the Conservation Commission, there are some specific details associated with the 2 affordable housing units that have not yet been covered. If approved by town meeting this evening, the subsequent reviews to be conducted by the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals are appropriate forums to finalize these details. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Serbier. If the meeting could now indulge the chair on the procedural motion, which was pursuant to Section 3.8.2, subsection 3 of the Code of Bylaws, that the meeting would waive the 7-day notice requirement to the extent it can be construed to apply to the provision of the development agreement. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This returns us to debate on the motion made under Article 1. The chair will also entertain debate on Article 2, as these are presented to us together in the context of this special town meeting. Further on the questions? Yes, in the back, Mr. Pitaro.
I'll come down, but I have a couple questions. Why don't I just come down? I can do it from here.
Okay.
This is an excellent resolution of a highly conflicted development activity over many years. But I have a couple questions on some of the economics. A couple questions first to the developer on the pricing and the price give up on the affordable housing, and could that be related to the life cycle expected for the structure?
The question Mr. Pitaro asks, Mr. Bonvie, if you could address that. He asked a question to you. If you could speak to the, in your remarks, you addressed the valuation of the benefit to the town for the low-income housing units as being $1.8 million. Mr. Pitaro, I believe, is asking you to speak to what values are implied in that calculation, and also, I think, to the extended value over the life of the units.
I think the 1.8 was Mr. Betancourt's presentation. I don't know if you want to answer that, Mr. Betancourt? I'm not disagreeing with it, but I just think it might be better. Yes. Only because it was in your slide.
Yeah, I think that when we looked at valuing the two affordable units, we looked at kind of the mid-range of your cost there and gave a conservative value on it. So potentially those units would be valued more. The affordable units will cost the purchasers considerably less than that, and your cost will be considerably higher to build them. That was the need for the, or at least the request for the 29th unit that you made. I don't know if that answers Mr. Bataro's question or not.
Actually, no.
Okay.
I was just
Maybe I
asking,
can help.
what do you expect the average price to be for the most of the units and the affordable unit?
Between 900 and $1.1 million, I would say, would be targeted at this time now for the non-affordables. I believe the affordables will sell, and correct me if I'm wrong, for 180 to 200 to 210, somewhere in that range.
Call it 200. So
Call it
roughly
200.
a million, the median price, middle, to 200, using simple. And the restrictions go legal, they're intended to be permanent?
Perpetuity, forever.
These things
Deed
often,
restricted in perpetuity.
they often do get revisited when the buildings,
I can tell you, I'm on a zoning board of appeals in the town of Mashpee, have been for years. I approve for 40Bs all the time, and we require, and it's required by the state now, deed restriction perpetuity on a 40B or affordable unit. It's forevermore.
okay. Then my next question goes, and I'll have a follow-up on this, goes to the Finance Committee. Was the property tax give up to the town valued on a net present value basis?
Mr. Pitaro asked the Finance Committee, was the property tax give up, and I assume in making that statement, Mr. Pitaro, you're referring to the taxations of the affordable units?
Correct.
And so the differential being the 800,000 between the market rate of $1 million and the purchase rate of 200,000?
Yeah, so the amount in property tax revenue that is projected is the market value for the non-affordable units,
Right.
and then the purchase price of the affordable unit. So that would be around $200,000 as far as the evaluation for those two units.
So our property tax rate, which is about 1.2%, $12 per thousand,
Right.
in perpetuity is a revenue give up.
Well, I mean, our tax rate changes as our tax levy changes, but the tax rate is the same across all properties in the town, but the tax assessment of those properties is the purchase price.
And will stay somewhat similar. Assuming similar numbers go on for, let's say, 80 years, and say my number is right, a 1.2% per year property tax give up for 80 years is about equal to 100% of the 800,000 on a net present value basis. If you assume that the revenue foregone would have grown at the 2.5%, and you're using a 2.5% discount rate just to make the math simple. So what I want to point out here, the economic, and I'll say this at the end again, vote in favor of this. This is a good project, good resolution of deal. But $800,000 of economic value was given up by the developer. And 3 extra units are built, which is going to be one of my other points about what 40B does to development. It promotes overdevelopment. $800,000 over the next 80 years, net present value is given up by the town. $1.6 million is being given up to create one $200,000 unit. If that money were put into a fund that paid out 4% a year, that'd be around $60-some thousand a year, could provide housing subsidies for I don't know, 5 families? We are handcuffed by what is, I can only call intellectually incoherent affordable housing economics. The cost of the unit did not change. The price of the unit changed. The allocation of that price between developers, the developer and the other parties changed. The town is contributing. We could have allocated resources much more efficiently. I sure hope the 40B forever restriction is legal. I see one of our legislators I've seen here, I don't know if Mr. Day is here. I think we need to examine this. It just does not allocate resources right, does not accomplish the goals of housing whose cost is affordable, so people can afford something that can be rebuilt, renewed, sustainable, that they can pay for. Other objectives of housing, 2 units. I will also say that this continued 10% mythology, yes, it's the law. It is virtually impossible to achieve in a built-out town like Winchester. And yet the law basically delegates to developers, and we have this problem up on Cambridge Street, delegates to developers our zoning powers. And again, if I could rely on anything that makes any sense about the economic logic of this in a built-out town with high land values, that'd be a different story, but I cannot. So, if Mr. Moderator, this special town meeting had a warrant article that allowed for the proposal of a committee, that would be nice, but I would suggest that the selectmen create an ad hoc committee to look at what is the benefit of Winchester's affordable housing to the affordable housing problem, and in terms of who's in the housing, are they still in the select group that is economically qualified on the day they sign the purchase and sale agreement, but never any day after that, and see if this can be related to what's going on regionally, and then press our legislators to do something a little more reasonable. Yes, affordable housing is a good goal. Diversity in housing tenancy, housing ownership is a great goal. This, I don't know what the goal is other than letting people check off the box that we're doing something good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vitaro. Further on the question? Yes, ma'am. If you could just, there's a microphone for you there.
One is that there's about $500K allocated to upgrade the sewers. I wonder how that number came about, because to me, that doesn't seem like enough. The second is that I am very concerned that it's within 100 feet of conservation land, and that we heard from Mr. Bonvie. What we heard from him was that this was one idea, that it may change. So I'm very concerned that what we're seeing here is something that's good and that it may change. So I really kind of allotted on that comment by him that, boy, this might change. So I'd like, perhaps he could, how solid is this design that we're seeing?
So
Mr. Moderator?
I'll ask Mr. Grensback to address your question as to how the board arrived at the cap of $500,000 for the towards the sewer improvements. But just as to your second question, in fairness to the developer, is that the town meeting is not a permit granting authority, and that all we're doing this evening, if we vote affirmatively, would be 2 things. One, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a development agreement that they believe is in the best interest of the town, and 2, to otherwise rezone this property in a way that would make it amenable for the type of development that Mr. Bonvie has described to us. But the particulars of that development will be subject to the ordinary review process of any development, which will include a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Those are obviously a function of public notice, public input, and a number of opportunities for people to weigh in on that. And I believe Mr. Bomby's comment was just addressed to the elasticity of that process and the need for and requirement of public input. But Mr. Grensback, if you could address the town meeting member's question as to how the board arrived at the $500,000 cap for the sewer improvements.
Thank you. We asked the town engineer to estimate and update the estimates of the cost to replace the sewer pump at that station on Thornbury Road. We also looked at the cost to upgrade the lines, sewage lines leading down Johnson to Wildwood Street. The town engineer looked at that, had our engineering consultant verify the estimates, and then we looked at what was a reasonable allocation of those costs to this development and came up with the $500,000. What we have done is we will actually make those improvements ourselves. We will then bill the developer for those, and to ensure that the money is in place, in the development agreement, you will find a requirement for the developer to post a bond for $500,000. So we will bill them as we go, and the bond is there to ensure that the $500,000 is available regardless of what happens during the process of the development.
Yes, ma'am. Further in the question.
Just quickly, Mr. Moderator, he did say that that he would that 500,000 came out of other upgrades that we would be doing. So are we going to be?
No.
Is the town going to be spending any money on this?
I'm sorry, it does not come out of anything else. The $500,000 is being paid by Mr. Bonvy to the town to build, improve the Thornbury pumping station and to improve the Wildwood station.
Is the town going to be spending? Sorry,
We will
Mr.
not.
Moderator?
We are not taking money from anything else.
I think the town meeting member's question just was, is the $500,000 part of a larger expenditure
Yes.
of which the town will contribute other funds, or is the $500,000 a reasonable estimate of the total cost of the entire project without any supplementary expenditure by the town?
I think the fair way to say is this $500,000 will go to those two specific pieces. We have, as you understand and have listened in previous town meetings, a program to improve the drainage and the sewage system for the whole west side. So there will be other projects out there that will be paid for by other town capital bonds. So this will be a contributing amount of money. It will not cover the entire west side.
Thank you, Mr. Grensback. Further on the question. Yes, Ms. Welch. Actually, Jackie, if you could just walk down to the microphone, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'll just be really brief, and it's clearly a good project. I just wanted to, first of all, note an observation about what Mr. Bottaro was saying, former longtime member of the Planning Board, and thank you so much, Mr. Bottaro, for your, what I think were excellent observations, because I also shared just the question about the assumption of the $1.8 million benefit, quote unquote, to the town of the affordable units, and just wanting to better understand what the basis is and the assumptions that are being used. I think as town meeting members, we certainly aren't necessarily questioning it, but deserve to know what those assumptions are and how that's calculated. I also think that Mr. Bottaro's suggestion, and whether or not it's out of order right now, but at some point the Board of Selectmen should consider perhaps a subcommittee to further explore those issues about affordable housing and different approaches, different economic assumptions, and what can best be tailored for our town, whether it's the same approaches or something along the lines that Mr. Bottaro was suggesting, because seeing the $1.8 million as being the presumption of being a benefit to the town, we just, obviously share the question about what those assumptions are and whether or not they're really applicable given other economic options. But my only question really beyond that is simply, given the numbers that have been discussed tonight, including, thank you so much, Mr. Bonvy, for giving us an estimated market price potentially for the unit, and we know it's completely an estimate, as well as the estimate on the affordable housing units. So if there's 27 non-affordable housing units, and if the ballpark figure is $1 million each, then we're looking at around $27 million, if I'm doing that math correctly. Is it possible for us as town meeting to just know the purchase price of the land? Is that possible? I'm just kind of curious.
So the town meeting member's question is, what was the developer's purchase price for the land independent of the linkage payment of $1 million?
If I recall correctly, it was 3.25 million?
And so the developer affirms Mr. Grenzbeck's statement that the developer's purchase cost was $3.25 million plus the linkage payment, obviously, of $1 million.
Respond to the first part of your question. The estimated value to the town of 1.8 that's shown on the table that Mike listed is our sort of guesstimate of the value of that town, if we had to go out and build 2 houses to support a family in Winchester today, our guess was that probably it would cost us between $800,000 and $1 million. I mean, the average price for sale for a house now is in the 900. You probably could ascribe a lower value if you could find an opportunity to build houses that were lower price than that. But it would cost us a considerable amount to do that. So it's an ascribed value to the town. It will be built by the developer, turned over to the Housing Partnership Board in the town to bid out. So their costs are going to be substantial, but for the town, if we had to replace that, we'd be spending somewhere in that range. I mean, 1.6, 1.8, 2. I mean, it's a bit of an economic guess to pick an exact number, but and I think many town meeting members understand that we've been accumulating money in the Selectmen's Housing Fund, but have been largely unable to spend it. The houses that are suitable disappear from the market before the realtors put the sign up. And then if we find one that is suitable that we can afford, we must come back to you to get a town meeting approval at either spring or fall for the sale or purchase of those properties. And by the time we do that, they're gone too. So I think that Mr. Serbier's comment that the town ascribes a fairly significant value to having 2 units on site. And again, if you want to value that at 1.6 or 2, that's perfectly valid. So that was just our ballpark estimate of value.
Thank you, Mr. Grenzbeck. Further on the question. Yes, sir. The town meeting member's question is on a follow-up on the sewer improvements. What was the town engineer's estimate on the projects?
It was slightly above the 500,000, but we did not put them out for bid, so they were ballpark estimates. What we did was look at I believe that Beth can confirm, I believe the pump station was in the range of 300,000, and the lining was in the range of 200,000 or more. Again, we have not put those out to bid to see the exact numbers, and we cannot ascribe the entire improvements, for example, to the Johnson lines, to this development. And we're adding 26 houses here. That line serves a much wider section of Winchester than just this development. So we've apportioned roughly the cost to this development, and that totals 500,000. We will put out to bid the projects. The town will look for the best price to put them in. We expect to bring in that work within the 500,000 when we go out to bid.
And just as a follow-up, does this agreement force us to do the upgrades then?
It doesn't force us to do it, but I'll probably be tarred and feathered by the neighbors up there if we don't.
Understood.
Or worse than the tar and feather, I'm afraid. I mean, this has been a series of problems as that area is developed. It flows downhill, and some of the system is old. As many of you are aware of, we've been looking with the town engineer in Weston and Sampson, looking systematically to upgrade a lot of the capacity in that area. So this is part of that, and it needs to be done.
Further on the question. Are you yes, I'm sorry. Ms. Savage? What?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carol Savage, Precinct 5. I have some questions about sort of the overall economics of this. There was some comments made, I guess I'm in that 55 plus bracket, and $1 million doesn't sound that affordable to me. So I'm kind of questioning that. An earlier comment was made about the target segment for this being individuals in the $65,000 a year income bracket, and I'm questioning whether $1 million home is affordable to that kind of person, and so I'm not quite sure who the target is for purchasing of these units. And then I sort of think about the economics to the developer at $1 million each. That's approximately $29 million of real estate sales. And if I understood the conversation earlier, well, I don't know what the construction cost is per unit, but I thought I heard the number 200,000, which sort of back of the envelope, I mean, that sounds a little low to me, but even if it's half that, then there's $15 million in benefit or more to the developer in this project, net of maybe a $3 million purchase price, if I understood that correctly. In any way, and the town of Winchester gets $1 million and $500,000 in sewer upgrades, plus this revenue stream in real estate taxes going forward. I guess I don't quite understand the economics of this as much as I would like. It does feel like it's a real windfall for the developer, and I just question if the town is getting enough out of it.
So the
So I'd like some answers to some of those questions, those assumptions.
I'll ask the board to respond to that. I think there's a little bit of we're conflating some numbers there. The $65,000 referred to the eligibility of buyers for those affordable units, the income cap on their earnings. Their purchase price would be something around $180,000 to $200,000, which is where that number comes from. That certainly is not the cost of construction or the developer's cost basis for the units, which, as you acknowledged, the cost of the units will be substantially more. I think for the economics, the board's argument that was made to the meeting was that their land vest appraisal came in at a number that made the $5.3 million that Mr. Betancourt referenced match with the land vest valuation that they had received. The developer, and I think that's the question before the meeting, is to the town meeting members' question, is the town realizing the current economic value of the land? How much the developer makes may or may not be reflective of that, but the developer obviously has construction costs, acquisition costs, land holding costs, and all sorts of other costs in terms of the time value of the money that's tied up and the time it will take them to bring the units to market. But I would ask Mr. Betancourt or Mr. Grensback to address the town meeting members' question as to is the town receiving a fair and good economic deal, and why is it the board believes that to be the case?
And one other question, which is 10% of housing, affordable housing stock would mean 3 units, not 2. So if you could add that question in as well.
Okay. So the valuation, the question for the town was well, start with, we do not own the property, and we've been told by the Inspector General's office that we can't sell it twice. However, we've given consideration to it. But the question that we asked was, if we were selling that land today, we don't have the right to do it, but if we were, what value would we get for it on the open market? And that's the question we asked Landvest and Bonds, the appraisers. And their answer, the midpoint of their answer came back in the 5.3, 5.4 range. This would be for undeveloped land that you would then turn over to somebody and they would build houses, and their problem of making a profit on the house building would be their problem. The question was, what's the value of the land? Okay. Landvest did a very close analysis. Mr. Powers and Mr. Rico, from our prior experience on the Assessors Board, followed it very closely. Their answer is about 5.3. So in looking at whether it's a good value for the town, we said, what did Mr. Salter pay? What did we received in previous improvements? And what were we getting out of the current development proposal in linkage payments and others? And the answer comes up to about $5 million, $5.3 million. You can move the numbers one way or another, but for us, it seemed to be a reasonably equitable amount of money to in effect be selling the land or giving them the development rights. Keep in mind also that, as the FinCom pointed out, we then get a considerable, somewhere in the range of $300,000 in permit fees and a recurring yearly sort of property tax revenue of somewhere approaching $400,000. So there's value in the development of this land to the town. Then the second question, which I've now completely forgotten, is...
Well, the 10% would be 3 units, not 2 units.
10% would be 3 units. The constraint there was the space available. Because it is ringed by wetlands, the Conservation Commission has set a fairly tight boundary for development there. This was hashed out considerably on the previous development and basically is pretty well fixed. We did not think you were going to get many more units up there without being a pretty crowded facility. The ARCDOD restricts, you can build 1, 2, 3, or 4 units in a cluster. You can't go more, and you can't go up and do flats. So we asked the developer if he wanted to build more, thinking we would get more revenue, and they said no, for this market they could not look at different combinations above 28, 29 and make it viable. So we're getting 2 units there, and we can, as a town meeting, deal with the question of whether we take some of that linkage payment and in effect buy a 3rd affordable unit somewhere else in town. We'll debate that in the fall if and when we get the money.
Thank you very much.
So last question.
Promise?
Yes. The trails question that was answered or asked earlier, is that in the agreement that we would have public access to the trails?
Town meeting member's question is, will the town have public access to the trails which are referred to in the agreement?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, further in the question, ma'am.
Karen Silvernice, Precinct 7. Again, I think this is a reasonable proposition. I just have a question on the open space. It lists in there that the developer shall provide a public parking area on-site or adjacent to town-owned property. But I see nothing in this concept that gives me any indication of where such parking might be.
Thank you. The town meeting member's question is, the development agreement makes reference to a parking area for access for members of the public to the conservation area, but the plan that's on the screen does not seem to indicate the parking area. Mr. Betancourt.
As Mr. Bonvy had indicated, the plan that you see up here is not the final plan. It still has to go through the Planning Board and the ZBA and the Conservation Commission. So we have agreed with Mr. Bonvy, and this is a part of our agreement, to have parking available for a certain amount of cars. And that will either be on the Bonvy property or it'll be on adjacent town land. It was important for us to give access to residents for parking there. Was that not your question, Silver?
So the town meeting member's question is, where would there be adjacent town land that Mr. Betancourt made reference to in his response?
Okay.
That'd be very nice, Mr. Parkhurst. We appreciate that.
What? Sorry, what?
Don't worry about it, guys. We found someone who can answer the question. Mr. Parkhurst, the chairperson of the Conservation Commission, will answer the town meeting member's question. Mr. Parkhurst.
All right, to answer the question, where is the town's land, see where that V is? It goes like so. It borders the town of the Woburn. And that was the policy, the parcel, some of you may remember, that was alleged to be contaminated, so that when approximately an acre of land, and so that the town declined to purchase that from Winning Homes. And that was litigated, and then it was turned out that the town could purchase it. So that is one of the locations. Now, in fact, we were chatting about this just before the meeting, actually. And if the parking were to be in that town-owned parcel near the Woburn line, then one of the trails, I think the one that runs up on the right-hand side there with a little turn-in, would have to be an effective driveway so that people would have access to the parking lot. Because the one thing we, as a commission, want to guard against is having the parking lot so far away from the trails that nobody would use them. What's the point of having the trails if you can't get there? So there are a couple of other options too that were being discussed, which have not been finalized, by the way. But in the lower left-hand corner, there's some space. To the right on Gershon Way, there's some space. Those are possibilities, and maybe inside the V of depending where the wetlands are. So there are several options, but they have not been pinned down. But the Conservation Commission will work very hard to make sure that wherever that parking lot is, it's within easy walking distance of the trails. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parkhurst. Further on the question? Seem to be ready for the question. This is a 2/3 vote. We'll try a voice vote to start. The motion comes before the town meeting on Article 1 as previously read. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair declares the vote unanimous, reaching the 2/3 majority required. This brings us to Article 2. Under Article 2, it's moved and seconded to see if the town will vote to include the following 2 parcels of land within the attached residential cluster development overlay district, ARCDOD, and the parcels of land and the meets and bounds of those parcels are as set forth on page 5 of the special town meeting materials dated April 25th, 2016, as set forth therein. Motion having been made and seconded, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair declares the vote unanimous and the motion passes. This concludes our business in the special town meeting. I have 2 points for the meeting before we adjourn this evening. One, Mr. Serbier, I think it's evident that along with our private joy at the increasing equity in our homes, we have a fair amount of public angst over the efficacy of our housing partnership policies and procedures and whether we're doing the right things and doing enough to promote those. So at the fall town meeting, if in connection with our reports on committees, your committee could be prepared to make a presentation to the town meeting addressing the points that have been articulated by Mr. Bottaro and Ms. Welch this evening, I think that would serve the meeting and the town well. To the extent that you find it necessary or helpful to recommend the formation of a separate or supplementary committee to address those issues, please feel free to raise that at the fall town meeting. But I think those are important questions that have been well articulated this evening, and we should be prepared to address them. Finally, tonight as a community, we did the most important thing we do, and that is we graduated students from our high school after the completion of their K-12 education. It's a great thing, and it's done through the hard work and dedication of the teachers and staff in our public school system. When you see those teachers and staff around town in the next few days and weeks, please take a moment to thank them for the service that they provide to our children and to all of us. It's a great thing that they do. I would add my thanks to all of you for your participation here this evening. Mr. Bombi, we look forward to working with you in the town of Winchester. Appreciate your participation in the process. Thank you very much to the board, the FinCom, and all the boards that worked so hard on this. Motion to adjourn? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Iden. We are here at the Winchester High School and just at the conclusion of the special town meeting. 2 articles being considered tonight, both regarding winning the in the extreme northwest corner of the town. A little bit of history. It is 20 years since the purchase of Winning Farm. The town purchased 45 acres of the land that is bordered by Woburn and Lexington. Under an agreement in 2006 with the Salter family, it was sold, 12.5 acres were sold for development, to be preserved for conservation land. So Article 1, going back on the history of that, Article 1 was proposed by the Board of Selectmen, and this was to rescind all the agreements that were made in 2006 with the Salter family, and to amend it to allow development of 29 age-restricted units by developer Ron Bonvy, 29 age-restricted units, and would be sold. Again, that was sold to the Salters in 2000. I'm sorry, sold to the Salter family in 2000 with the to develop. However, they were unable to develop it due to changes in the market for assisted living. So the first article was to allow the selectmen to rescind all those agreements. The second article was a zoning article to change that district to allow for the Mr. Bonvy to construct 27 units of age-restricted housing, that age restriction being 5 plus, and no school-aged children, and 2 affordable units with no age restriction. In return for that, in return for this rezoning, Mr. Bonvy will make a $1 million payment to the town, unrestricted funds to the town meeting to decide how to spend. There will also, he will spend approximately $500,000 to upgrade the Thornbury Road sewer system and other improvements to the water system in that area. These 29 units will be offered first to Winchester residents before being offered to the general public. He also said there will be improvements to the conservation area, the 32.5 acres of conservation area, which will include new walking trails and parking for public access to these trails. We did hear a presentation from Mr. Bonvy, who has been in the development business for 44 years, as he said, since he was 17 years old. We heard from Betsy Krager from the Planning Board, who said that this agreement meets all the goals of the Planning Board. So again, in a very, two articles here, both were passed, required 2/3 votes. Both were passed unanimously. One, to allow the selectmen to rescind their agreements and enter an agreement with Mr. Bonvy, and 2, for the rezoning of this article to allow for these residential units to be built in that area. And that's it. 2 articles, both passed unanimously by the special town meeting, and that wraps up the town meeting schedule for this spring. Town meeting will be back in the fall. We'll be back with our coverage for all of us at WinCam. Thank you for watching. Have a great summer.